is the title that Alex Lockheed came up with. So DOT reveals the real reason it's pushing out 200,000 non-domiciled CDL drivers. The title is titled that way because they lack safety data to justify pushing out 200,000 non-domiciled CDL drivers. And Alex Lockheed, who claims he's neutral, wants you to know that. So his article starts by saying, an owner-operator's petition to stop the Department of Transportation new rule looking to purge 200,000 non-domiciled CDL holders from the industry got a response from the DOT, as well as petitioners counter. And now the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District Circuit will decide the fate of the rule in just a few weeks. Let's try this over. The original suit, filed 3 weeks after DOT's emergency rulemaking went into effect, seeking to stop the rule, challenged the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's logic behind banning most CDLs for non-citizens. The lawsuit's lead named plaintiff is an owner-operator who won't be able to renew his CDL and is backed by big unions representing teachers and government workers, not truckers. The owner-operator in question is Jorge Rivera Luja, I guess. That last name just gets me every time. He came to the U.S. at 2 years old and operates a small fleet. Now that DOT has responded to the petition to the court to stay the rule immediately, it's clear there's one thing both DOT and the petitioners agree on. And again, as I said, how Alex titled this article is to lead us all to this. DOT does not have comprehensive data linking citizenship or state of domicile to safety outcomes. So this is where we get into the real reason, because that's not the reason. Obviously, they lack it. And Alex wants us to know that. The DOT's response, filed on October 31st, argues that it doesn't need any such data. Problems with reviewing the driver records of non-citizens in the current state of drivers licensing agencies necessitate the rule. Instead of a broad study on safety impacts of non-citizen drivers that would take months or years to complete, DOT wrote, the salient point is that state licensing authorities do not and cannot assess with the same degree of confidence a non-domiciled applicant's safety because individuals domiciled outside a given state but seeking a CDL, a category almost entirely comprised of non-domiciled aliens, tend to have driving histories outside the reach of the U.S. state level agencies. That's pretty clear cut. Pretty much that's just saying, hey, listen, we got people here from countries that either they don't keep records, or if they do keep records, it would take years to collect the database of every non-domiciled driver and specific to each country requesting these driving records, because and quite frankly, some of these countries just don't do that. These third world countries out of Africa and Haiti and some places in South America do not do that, and some places in Europe, I suppose, Pakistan and India. We're looking to try to get driving records from India. Like, come on. Therefore, it's fair game to shut down non-domiciled CDLs. DOT said it's the federal agency's job to set the standards for CDL testing, and that's pretty much never has been challenged. The federal agency's job to set the standards has never been challenged. And framework of bringing a petition to the U.S. District of Court of Appeals, you've had drivers challenge things such as the ELD, the times of hours of service, but those things were handled or brought directly to the agency. So it's never been challenged. And this is 10 years, right? 10 years of driving records. That's regulation on the books going back to 1986 in their Commercial Motor Vehicle Safety Act. Since state DMVs can't really find out the driving records of a CDL applicant from a foreign country, DOT now finds those drivers don't make the cut. I mean, That's pretty much what this is issue. Really, that's kind of like the root of the issue. It's a federal regulation and the standards that go all the way back to 3-4 decades, and it's never been challenged. And now you're saying, hey, well, we got this thing with all of these foreigners on the road who haven't met those standards, and so we need to remove them off the roads. And then you got a guy saying, well, wait, what about, that's not fair, it's violating my civil rights. I kind of like a clean cut, clear argument. And their response is that Lawan, he says he's been here, he has legal authority to live in and work in the country, as would the other 200,000 non-domicile CDL holders DOT seeks to purge, but not necessarily legal authority to drive big trucks. That's the thing. Voila. So, hey, look, first, for one, the 200,000 non-domicile CD holders, that right there is a big, vague assumption to say that they all are here legally and they have the authority to work in the country. We already know that, 62,000 in California that were issued incorrectly, right? Or 62 or 20,000. Really, if you really want to get deep into these numbers, you can say that that's just not accurate. That 200,000 non-domicile CDL holders are here legally. Says employers may be obligated to verify prospective employees, but we know that's not happening, right? DOT wrote, adding drivers like Luan could find another driving job at minimum cost, or he could find another, like a trade or another job that doesn't, where he meets the requirement. Where he does not meet the requirement to drive tractor trailers across the road, given the fact that he's been here since he was 2. And this article is going to go down here to say, talks about he's been here for 2, but and I'll make the exception for him because it's not every non-domicile driver who have had long-term residency here. We know for a fact that within the last 4 years alone, upwards of 22 million people got into this country, and quite a large majority of them have been thrust into trucking under the guise of the driver shortage myth. So it talks about his DACA history. It talks about the H-2A and the H-2B visas who are permitted to drive in the country, in which that's another problem area that it kind of going to have to tackle that right after non-domicile CDLs. The thing is that's going to be a little bit more challenging because you have congressmen and you have like American Truckers Association who are actively trying to get legislation codified that will enable them to continue to run loads in this country under that criteria, as long as they meet the visa background and they have the H2 and the H1 and the H2 visa paperwork. So that's going to be another challenge. A lot of truckers don't want to see them here. We want them off the road too, because again, they're still cheap labor. They'll still take these cheap rates and undercut American drivers. So even when you get rid of the non-domiciled CDL drivers, the next problem area is going to be those H1 and H2B visa drivers from them foreign countries. Says that the petitioners also argue that courts must stop the rule because drivers like Lujan and thousands of others will be injured by losing their work. That's the next argument they go to, and they get favorable rulings, is by going to these courts saying that these decisions are causing irreparable harm. And we've seen that with a lot of the TPS, the Supreme Court sided with the government. But one of the main arguments they were trying to have the courts rule in their favor on was the irreparable harm of removing TPS from all of these thousands of immigrants. So we wind up here at the end of it. The DOT did make a concession on as it relates to non-domicile, and they say, hey, if the courts decide to stop the rule, DOT argued in its recent filing, it should only do so with respects to certain classes of non-citizens. For example, if the court decides to stay the rule on behalf of DACA recipients, DOT asks it not to stay the rule for asylum seekers or other groups of non-citizens. So, and I think that's a fair, outcome. That if, hey, look, if you do side with this petition, we got to keep in mind that, hey, he might have a good driving record here as many DACA recipients, and some asylum seekers and refugees who've actually been here before the age of 16. But then we got to look at the people that have just gotten here within the last 4 to 6 years, and still don't speak English, right? And they're asylees and they're border crossers, and many of them have orders of removal. So we got to get them up out of here. I'm taking this quick survey, and I'm in this, and this is to see what truckers are saying. So I'm just going to fill this out, and let's see the results here. This is an 80-20 issue. Let's see, did I get the results? So here we are. This is the result of this survey that pretty much wants to look at the overall favorability, approval of this new rule amongst drivers. So here, your peers have had to say, commercial drivers, which of the following best describe your U.S. citizenship? So about 81% of the drivers who taken this survey are natural born citizens. The U.S. Department of Transportation's recent rule change, we know it prevents specific visas from being granted to non-domiciled CDLs. Which of the following best describes your opinion of the change? So 75% are in full support, 9% support, 7% support. So it's a large group of support.